lot of people don't do their due diligence in trying to find the right person who's ethical. The purity of the substances used is not known, especially street substances. And so you don't know what you're getting and who's to follow you up. So I think caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Part of the process is knowing where and how to choose the right person, and to do your research and to realize that you don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars to have this experience.
Welcome to the Mindfulness Experience podcast. I'm your host, Keith Fifeson. On this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Alexander Shester. He's a medical doctor and board-certified psychiatrist and Jungian Analyst who has over 30 years of experience studying and participating in guided psychedelic vision quests using shamanic principles. Dr. Shester has a long history of experience in the use of psychedelics, and he'll share his insights on their resurgence and potential for healing and transformation. He's just written a new book entitled Visionary Healing: Psychedelic Medicine and Shamanism. Dr. Shester also has been a lecturer and workshop seminar leader, focusing on topics such as Jungian psychology, transpersonal psychology, men's studies, shamanism, and psychedelics. So whether or not you're new to psychedelics or have long been intrigued by their potential benefits, this episode will be an insightful and thought-provoking discussion that you just can't miss. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Shester. Hey, Dr. Alex Shester. What is happening, my friend? What is going on?
Hey, this is what's going on.
Love it, man. Thank you.
Okay.
How you doing over there?
Well, I'm doing well in California. And you're in New York City nearly, or?
Yeah. Well, you're on the right coast. I'm actually, they say I'm on the right coast, but like there's so many things happening in California. I mean, the whole cannabis revolution, the psychedelic revolution, all of that. And I'm really just so privileged to have you on the show because you were there. Like you've been there. You've traveled the road, and you've done a lot of work, and you're now out with this incredible book called Visionary Healing: Psychedelic Medicines and Shamanism. Wow. What is that all about?
Well, when you get to be my ripe old age, you start looking back on your life and what you've done and what you've learned, and I've had quite a few experiences, and I know really that this whole psychedelic renaissance is starting to happen once again for its positive and negative aspects. But during COVID, I had more time to think, and luckily I had a lot of psychonautical adventures with several shamans. More particularly Ralph Metzner, who's a psychologist and
amazing. Some of the stuff you've written about in your work with Ralph Metzner has been. I mean, I jumped into this book and I really felt like I went through the looking glass. It's amazing.
Yeah, he died about 3 years ago, but even though I see him as one of the pioneers of the psychedelic renaissance that's going on, he's been somewhat neglected, by a lot of the people these days. And I thought it was very important to bring his teaching out. I mean, he went back to the 1960s where he worked with Tim Leary, Richard Alpert, who's Ram Dass, doing psilocybin studies in Harvard. And although Tim Leary and Richard Alpert had their other trajectories, Ralph continued on with yoga, energy meditations, and psychedelic use of psychedelics for healing and envisioning, and developed a whole program where he started leading these psychedelic circles that I was very honored to be invited to, and then participate for over 20 years with him.
You've traveled both roads. I mean, I read your bio. You were in the Air Force. You became interested in Jung. You went to medical school. You wound up becoming a bit disillusioned with that. You became a psychiatrist, then you're an analyst, you a Jungian analyst, and you're also involved with this shamanic training. And your book really is so insightful because you not only talk about it from a scientific viewpoint, you also talk about it from an experiential viewpoint. And then you bring in the whole shaman aspects of it with Ralph Metzner. Tell me, when you talk about his approach, what was it that was so different about that from your viewpoint? You know, what did he bring to it that maybe is missing today?
Well, I think the main issues were he brought in the shamanic method, and as shamanism is not a religion; it's a method of healing that goes back thousands of years. So he was able to appropriate a lot of the customs of indigenous tribes, native tribes, brought it into modern Western psychology to be used. And the main things, of course, were developed, the idea of the medicine circle, the four directions, the six directions of the whole tree, and how combining shamanic meditations and orientations, how that can guide into a deep soul journey, healing yourself from things, and as well as visioning things about developing spiritual and other types of visions about nature. So using the shamanic techniques, he made it very safe and sacred to be able to travel to these other worlds in altered states using various medicines. And he used a lot of the major medicines, including ayahuasca, psilocybin, San Pedro cactus, iboga, which is ibogaine, and jurema, which is an ayahuasca analog, toad, which is a DMT derivative. He did not bring in peyote, which he felt was sacred to the Native Americans, and he didn't want to appropriate their culture and all that. But then I did work with a peyote shaman before I started working with Ralph for a number of years, where he would do circles in the Navajo method using peyote. So I've had this incredible experience with all these different medicines for exploration.
Wow. And
it really helped me in terms of my own healing, which only partially got healed up, I think, through psychoanalysis, Jungian analysis, therapy, and different things. So
wow, Alex, you're opening up so many kind of like questions for me, because one of the things that I noticed in the book, and I thought it was just so rich. You have so many incredible illustrations and so many diagrams. Is you had the Ralph Metzner view of the cosmic tree, and that wonderful cosmic tree, sort of starting in the underworld, the caves, the grottos, the wise men, the wise women, and really understanding the comparatives between the Native American and the Nordic Europeans. And I thought that was really so rich. And then you went into the Kabbalah, the mystical tree of God, and really those comparisons with the tree of life diagram that he put together, apparently, which is, really roots all the way down to the original nature, all the way up to the life fire, the earth wisdom. It just seems to me to be this such rich, collection of not only stories, but science, shamanism, and really understanding the richness of this. I'm wondering, from your viewpoint, when we talk about shamanism, the rise of psychedelics, how is what you learned, different from, let's say, today's shaman? Do you think?
Well, that's interesting. I think today's shaman, I don't know what their background is, psychologically, spiritually, but it seems that, with the psychedelic revolution, it's created a bandwagon effect where a lot of people want to hop onto it, especially with the new treatment modalities utilizing or being researched for using psychedelics, things like ketamine and psilocybin. It's just as you probably know as a podcaster, that every day I get things on the internet with teaching courses, how to do it online, how to become a psychedelic assistant, psychedelic therapist. It's very interesting. I mean, the shamanic techniques, you have to be careful with them because a lot of it is appropriated from indigenous cultures, and we're not really, what are we giving back to them when we appropriate it into Western medicine and psychology and into integrative medicine? So it's important to give credit where we're getting this and see how it interfaces. I think the one thing, being a doctor and a psychiatrist and a psychoanalyst, is we just have taken so much, we realize there's only so far it can take you. And I think Eastern philosophy, which is very interesting, and indigenous healing techniques and what happened throughout all cultures is very ripe now to not appropriate in terms of steal, but realize we need to integrate that into our Western approaches in order for healing and visioning. Medicines, regular psychotherapy can take you so far, and they're very good. I'm not putting them down. But there are people like me and other people who've been disillusioned by that approach only, and the rigidity of it and the reductionism. They would really wanting to have direct experiences, not interpretations by therapists or by dream analysts and the intellectual part of it, but really have an experience of going into this unknown space. It's very frightening. So you have to create a safe environment and setting and intention in order to travel there safely. And that's one thing I think Ralph was an expert guide. Number one, he was ethical. He never saw himself as a guru, never wanted to be attributed to that. He was a guide and a teacher. And he wrote, as you know, lots of incredible books. He also is very much into each person having a direct experience and seeing the medicines themselves, the plants, and even some of the synthetic medicines as having spirit molecules that open up your mind into seeing things completely differently, that you can go and find healing, not only from your parents, but your ancestors. And mythical figures that you come in contact with, spirit guides, with animals, stone people, the mineral realm, and all kinds of things. Not
truly a shamanic journey. So, you know, what you're talking about to me sounds a little like what happened with mindfulness. You know, in the term mindfulness, you know, where, you know, there's mindfulness on every corner. You're not necessarily learning the undertenets or the roots of mindfulness, which are really steeped in Buddhism, and really understanding the virtues and the values around that. You're just learning how to breathe, you know, which is okay. It's okay to learn how to breathe. You know, that's very important. But what you're talking about is sort of what I read in the book about something you wrote about Terence McKenna, who had a relationship, who said, you know, through the use of psilocybin, you can have this relationship with mushrooms or consider them to be messengers within nature, between nature and animals, really having this, you know, this interrelationship where you recognize that you're a part of the whole, rather than, you know, just being a human being, let's say, in the therapist office who put on the eye shades and just had this cool experience. Now, what does that mean? Yeah.
Well, McKenna, of course, you know, he said, he had this famous quote, and Ralph also said, sometimes the plants know more about us than we know about ourselves. Whether it's actually a spirit molecule or whether it's just a chemical gateway that opens up the radio receiver, our brain, into different frequencies, create new neural networks and programs.
Well, yeah, I mean, the neuroscience viewpoint of it is as you're shutting down the DMT, the default mode network, so that you can go into the subconscious brain, so you can gain access to your subconscious thoughts, which are 95% of your brain activity anyway. I mean, you know, but that's not necessarily what we're talking about. We're talking about this surrealistic ephemeral, ineffable, kind of experience, right?
Yeah, I think so. And it's very potent. And my relationship to the medicines is not so much microdosing to enhance creativity or treating depression that is treatment resistant. I mean, that's all going on now, but that's where the proliferation is.
Well, I'm not going to talk to you about microdosing. That's a whole other subject, right?
It's a whole other subject. I'm talking about the deep psychedelic experience, where it takes a bit of a warrior to go into it.
The heroic dose is what we're talking about here, right?
No, a heroic dose would be a high dose where it completely dissolves you, so you can't really work with it until you come back down and it's metabolized more. Right. But what I'm saying, a psychedelic dose that takes you to that, where you can get some molecular healing that you're maybe conscious of, but as you come back and your ego starts getting involved in a relationship with these entities that you experience within, start asking questions about what I need for my healing, or what's going on being stuck. And as you know, in my book, I talk about very personal issues too, my own depression, career burnout, and how these medicines help me come to terms with it and heal. Or childhood abuse and things like that, which I only went so far in my therapy, but this really was able to get me into the experience, seeing it from a different point of view as an adult. Looking at those memories, my dismemberment, my psyche as a young person, and to remember it and bring it back into the mindful,
reorganize it, reset, reboot, reset, reframe,
and bring it back to the present.
Bring it back,
and because that's where it ultimately, in mindfulness and with me, has to be integrated.
Great. I'm glad you brought up mindfulness.
Well, I want to give your
well, this is called the Mindfulness Experience, but one of the things you said in your book, and you talk about it, and by the way, the way you bring yourself and your own experiences, as I said at the very beginning, you bring an authenticity to your book, which is really based on not only your, scientific, intellectual perspective and your view and your in-depth study of shamanism and so on, but your own personal experiences, as well as some of your wonderful artwork. So I just want to lift that up. I mean, you've just done such a phenomenal job. But in your book, you talk about ways to prolong the acute changes resulting from a journey using mindfulness. Can you speak to that? And what does that mean?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of spiritual window shoppers out there who love the transcendent experience, because it can be frightening, but it also can be enlightening and transcendent and insightful. The problem with that, if left alone, tends over a period of weeks to months go away, and you're back to your old neurotic or your own basic self. So the idea is, how do you take an experience that's so powerful and put it into everyday use and actually change? And one thing that I tried to emphasize in my book was the difference between transcendence and transformation, insight and behavioral change. And all the therapists who are listening in know that's the bottleneck with any of their clients, is that it's easy to have insight, yes, but difficult to make change. I think that's where meditation, mindfulness, a daily work activity, either do some writing, meditating, or working with a therapist who's familiar with altered states and the territory, can help you integrate, because integration of a transcendent experience is the difficult thing, because ultimately what we want to do is evolve, progress in our individuation, in our development, mature. We work through traumas and also start seeing more positive things. And that involves the hard work of mindfulness.
Right. Having that recognition and choice, making a different choice, right?
You're given choices with insight and with psychedelics. Those are only choices. You have to take those choices and make decisions. And that's where the mindfulness, I think, is a very powerful tool and necessary tool in order to create behavioral change and integration.
Right. Well, someone else had talked about it in terms of, you get setting, which involves certainly your intention and the surroundings that you're in, and then integration and activation. I like that term, activation, the ability to go ahead and take all of the learnings and all the insights that you've had, and then being able to actually put them into place based on making the right decisions, following through, making the commitments. Because as I've always said, the nature of commitment is challenge. Once you make a commitment to something, you get challenged. You say, okay, I'm going to do this. And all of a sudden you bump up against yourself.
That's the hard work. You bump up against the greatest teacher in yourself, which is called the shadow in Jungian terms.
Oh, good.
And you have to look at that
Good.
And integrate it and
Good.
see that and stop projecting it onto other people and other groups, politically, religiously, whatever,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let's talk about the shadow. I love the conversations about the shadow. Can we do that? So you talk about purging toxicity and as one of the things in your background, and also you talk about the dangers of the shadow side of psychedelics. You mentioned a incident in the hot tub, and you mentioned that a couple of times, certainly in terms of the book itself, and making sure that you have the right formulations and other areas. But there is the shadow side of the work, isn't there? I mean, it's not all love and light, and people. Not everybody has a good journey. Not everybody transforms.
It's not only about people who just seek enlightenment. They go to as I mentioned, they go to a mountaintop and want to get their hair parted by a light beam. But they don't ask, what good does it do?
Their hair parted by a light beam. I'm going to borrow that. That's brilliant. Their hair parted by a light beam.
What's the good of that if you're not good to your friends and families down on the ground? And I know Robert Bly, when I worked with him over for years, him and Michael, he talked about endarkenment. That before enlightenment, a person has to be pounced on and pulled down and clawed by a leopard, a panther, and brought into the ground, face down, face their pain, their roots, or they can really go to paradise. It's just like Dante. I mean, you can't go straight to paradise. You have to have the descent into the inferno, then purgatorio, and then finally paradiso if you're fortunate enough. But I think that it's important to know that there is a shadow side to the psychedelic movement that's reminiscent of the Tim Leary days, where he espoused that everyone should just tune in and drop out and do this. And what happens once something becomes collective and everyone starts getting on a bandwagon, you get some not so ethical human creatures involved and wanting to make money or getting known, their power needs, or want to be part of someone who's being seen as. So there's a lot of people now leading circles and guides, and I'm not sure how much they've done their work. I think it's a little different now than Larry in that there's a lot more known and research about psychedelics and all the different things.
It's like 22,000 research papers now. So, but that doesn't mean much. That just gives people more of a license to kill.
That's a villain. License to kill.
Da, 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 da.
Yeah. Anyway, so you got all kinds of people. I've known people who've died during psychedelics by not having people with prepared for emergencies that occur, spiritual emergencies, physical emergencies. 2 people I know have drowned in hot tubs under the influence. They had heart attacks or just decided to leave. I don't know, but
and then we had that recent thing that happened in the plane. You saw that one where the guy was on mushrooms and he went crazy. He went into the plane. He took the mushrooms before he went on the plane, and then he tried to bring the plane down.
Yeah, you got that, but you also got people who are doing sweat lodge ceremonies who died from heat exhaustion. And a lot of these people are making a lot of money, but they are getting known because they're charismatic. But they don't have follow-up. So you can go and spend $14,000 and go to Costa Rica hotel and do ayahuasca
Mm-hmm.
and have your one phone call follow-up, but
That's it.
one really, they care. And then they tend to blame
Mm-hmm.
the client if they're
Right.
having a bad trip, not looking at themselves. And then, of course, there's a lot of instances of
Mm-hmm.
sexual boundary violations that go
Right.
on.
Right. I think your point's a really good one. One of the things that came up in my mind was the saying, if you want to lay down a good garden, you need to lay down a lot of your manure in order to go ahead and plant the seeds. And then you got to seed it, you got to feed it, you got to weed it, and you got to grow it, So it's just a lot of work, this life is not easy. I mean, we all get our big traumas and little traumas, and if we're lucky, we get to work through them and we get to look at them and have a different narrative, right?
Yeah, a lot of people want, of course, a quick cure, whether it's through
right.
medication from a psychiatrist and they don't want to do any work, or whether they do psychedelics.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not going to pan out. This, ketamine, and which is having a renewal now in psychiatry, and there's a lot of ketamine clinics that are unsupervised now that are going on. And the psilocybin retreats and things like that that are going on. There's just no regulation, not enough regulation. So what happens eventually is what happened in Tim Leary. You get a collective thing. A lot of people don't do their due diligence in trying to find the right person who's ethical. The purity of the substances used is not known, especially street substances.
Right.
And so you don't know what you're getting and who's to follow you up. So there are a lot of people led to the slaughter, so to speak. So I think caveat emptor, let the buyer beware. Part of the process is knowing where and how to choose the right person, and to do your research and to realize that you don't need to spend tens of thousands of dollars to have this experience. And as you know, there's a lot of ecotourism with
yeah. Just between Argentina, Brazil, Peru, Mexico,
you can buy ayahuasca from a street vendor.
That's right, you can. They'll give it to you in a little to-go cup.
Yeah, so everyone. Let me bring this home. So what I'm trying to say is that it's difficult to find a really good guide, and you want to who's ethical and knows the territory, and has done it for a few years, not somebody who just wants to get on the bandwagon that's taken 50 psilocybin trips and then become an expert.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. One of the things, as I said, I really love the way you weave archetypes, shamanism, science, spirituality, and you include, this area of our impact on, Mother Earth and the human pollution issue, the food waste issues that we've got. I mean, you really kind of bring it all home. I'm wondering, and there's something that you talk about in the book, and I have to ask this question. What role do religions or churches, in your view, what role have they played, and what role are they playing, or can they play? Because it sounds like this is really a mystical, it's a mystical path. I mean, it's a path that really leads to self-enlightenment, but at the same point, it is, from a shaman's viewpoint, it's very different than our traditional religions. But yet, if you read into it, many of the old religions have used plant medicines, and yet today we find that there's this new, upsurgence, if you will, this new rise of these psychedelic churches. So I'm really kind of looking at this and I'm wondering, in order to do this, is it your view that you need to have a mystical experience that's led by someone who's credible, or does it have to be a shamanic experience, like with, someone who has the credibility and, the certificates on their wall, like I do?
Well, I want to just say one thing about certificates. I've got plenty of them. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be ethical.
Exactly.
PhDs, MDs, a lot of greed and unethical people who you can't hide behind those. They do give maybe a small degree of credibility that you've done some work, but
and sometimes it's even worse with the people who have them. So watch out.
That's right.
Seriously.
Aldous Huxley said sometimes knowing enough about a subject can be more dangerous than not knowing anything about it. But
True.
back to the religion question,
Uh-huh.
it's a difficult one because it depends how flexible a person is with their religion versus how rigid they are. Religions, I think the difference between spirituality and organized religion has always been the conflict. And I think every major religion, organized religion, has mystical traditions. The Kabbalah for Judaism, the Gnostics and Christianity, and certainly in Islam, and we certainly from the East, we know
the Sufis,
the Sufis and all that. So the idea is, how do you, the shamanism thing is, I think, having direct experience rather than using a priest or rabbi or whatever tell you the way to be, or what is spiritual, what is God, and all that. Now, if an organized religion can contain your spiritual feelings and create the cultural support, which that's their main function, fine. I don't want to challenge anybody who believes in any religion and practices it. However, for us, people like me at least, get disillusioned. I was raised Jewish. With the traditional things, you don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I'm still Jewish, but I needed to go and look at some of the other traditions, spirituality, and I read all about them. But then I wanted to experience it. Sephirothic tree, the Sephiroth, the mystical tree, and
that's in the book.
That's in the book, and it's a correspondence to the other trees of life, the Nordic tree, Drossel, or that you have in Native American cultures and Nordic cultures. These are archetypes, vertical axis that have correspondences in different cultures. And I think once you start realizing, this is not just your particular religion, try to find a way to find, and I just had a need to have direct experience rather than just believe what somebody tells me.
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, you're really kind of painting the picture that Joseph Campbell so eloquently talks about in terms of world religions, world faiths, the monomyth. But then there's something there that I also remember, a beautiful quote by him, where he talks about the difference between religion and spirituality is like the difference between the menu and the meal. So it's like so you have all these organized religions, and they've all got great menus, and they'll all tell you how it's made. But the real question is are you able to digest it? Does it really enlighten you? Does it fill you? Does it really make you whole and energize you and make you complete? And you've done such a beautiful job of that in the book. Do you think that we've seen, are we at the beginning of a change in this religious art, in the religious structures? Because like one of the things that between the church, I mean, maybe we're getting off topic here, but I guess the question I have is, a lot of people believe that we're in the midst of a new spiritual renaissance as well, an age of enlightenment, where people are realizing their interconnection with the earth, their interconnection with the planet, and a lot of these substances, whether or not it's plant medicines or, the whole process of, whether or not it's cannabis or, going up to ayahuasca, that they're opening up these channels or these doors of perception that are giving them these direct experiences, so they don't want to go to church. They don't see the need to do that or go to temple or whatever. What are your thoughts?
If religion provides you the answers to your questions about what is life about, fine.
Fine, good.
But a lot of people are disillusioned by those rigid notions. But what I liked about the shamanic approach and psychedelics is they're all make you more nature related. You start seeing the interconnectedness of ecosystems, your human side and how it connects to plants and stones and the planet. It also connects you to cosmic regions, not just Earth. So you have these direct experiences, and I think that I think the question is there going to be enough people, a critical mass of people who are interested in this kind of enlightenment, or willing to do the hard work of really making change before it breaks through into historical reality. And I think we're right in a tipping point with climate change and population explosion that I don't know if there's going to be enough people in the world or even in our country that it's going to be able to create a major change. Hope springs eternal, and I have hope that maybe that will happen and there will be changes. Whether it'll be I doubt it'll be in my lifetime, or maybe a major cataclysm will need to occur. But the hope is my next book is called The Brilliant Earth that I'm now. Whether or not the human psyche and nature are going to survive, how we're going to survive this. And I don't know. Some days I'm pessimistic, some days I'm optimistic. I don't have an opinion. But no matter how pessimistic a person feels about what's happening in our culture with religion, politics, blah, 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 economics, it's really important that each one of us as individuals has to sort of, in their own psyche, create a positive image of how the world and the universe can be.
A higher vibration,
With their intention, if it was to manifest, how do you create the world? Not to be narcissistic about it and that you and anyone has the power, but if we give in to pessimism, we're giving away our power to other powers that be, which are so it's important and that's one thing about psychedelics, it can really help you reorient you to positive values about life, nature,
and our overall interconnectedness.
Interconnectedness, which is very important. And so I mean, I don't know.
Beautiful. That's beautiful. No, that's beautiful. I mean, you've really said it. I mean, because it really is about our impact on Mother Earth and the fact that we're all up from the earth. We're all creatures of, we're fed through the plants, fed through the air, fed through the sun, fed through the earth itself. I mean, this is life, and all the other stuff is just, it's just dogma, in a big way, right? I mean, you're getting right down to the basics of it,
Well, I hope that anyone who reads the book it'll make them think a little bit about some of these things that I raise. And I'm being vulnerable by making myself an example of experiences to help people see what these medicines and meditations, not only just medicine, because in the book, I also have a whole chapter. I don't know if you've gotten there yet, but on doing vision quests without medicine. Very, very powerful. I have it. I did that up in Canada in the wilderness. That was a very powerful experience, and I write all about that also. So medicines are good, and what used to be only available to the mystics, the few mystics of our time, at least these medicines are opening up channels now to the average person. To have these experiences, which were usually just the mystics would be able to experience, and now many of us can experience it. I just hope that it doesn't get so out of hand and so unregulated, people really wanting that quick answer. That people will see the seriousness of what our planet is going through, and how you can make changes by looking within. And that's, obviously my Jungian background has turned me within. And I saw that shamanism and these medicines did not contradict any of my previous things as a psychopharmacologist in psychiatry or a Jungian Analyst evaluating dreams. It took me to the next step of direct experience. And as I put in the book, it's the difference between sitting back and watching the movie and enjoying it versus being in the movie as an actor, and you're interacting with everyone and it's real at the time.
And then you're integrating it into the real world, because it is real. These are not sort of psychotic delusions. You know, these are real experiences that we're going through. You know, it's just like waking. It's like waking up. It's like being in a dream, but really recognizing no, this is the interconnectedness of reality, and I just haven't seen it before.
This is like another reality, which another
door of perception. Yeah.
I need to sort of see that as a reality, apart from consensus trance or consensus reality. And a lot of people say, well, 3 months later, is this just a psychedelic fantasy that you had and it's gone? Is it true or is it false?
Well, did you experience it or not? Yeah. I mean, you know,
I think it doesn't matter to ask that question.
Right.
All you have to say is, does it cause you to change and make the next step in a positive way in your life?
Right. Right. Is it making you a better person? Are there things that you can do that are making you a better person, and letting go of things that maybe baggage or stuff that you've carried behind that may be weighing you down, and looking at life a little differently? Now, what's wrong with that?
Nothing. As a matter of fact, these medicines have taken me to, as Jimi Hendrix said, to the outskirts of infinity.
I love that. However,
what did it do for me creatively? I sit there and play Appalachian music on my banjo,
right?
Like tobacco's dripping down my chin, and I have a corncob pipe in my mouth. And so, is that psychedelic music?
No,
it's roots music, man. It's the voice of the earth.
I love it. I love it.
Like the Delta blues with slide guitar, which I got into. That's the voice of our people in this country.
I love that. I love that.
You know, so to me, it's all interconnected. I asked Ralph. I said before he died, I says, this music I do, it's not very psychedelic. And he says, that's not the important thing. Important thing is it's led you to creativity, and as you put it, action. But what I would say, I like the word manifestation.
Manifestation.
How do you take a creative thought and manifest it in your daily life? And there are steps that you can do, and what a therapist can help one do, or meditations can help you take that insight and manifest.
Yeah, activate it, make it happen. So listen, this has been a very rich conversation with you, Dr. Alex Shester. And
I don't think the book is going to make me very rich.
Well, I don't think, no, maybe it
that's not the whole point of it. I'm just kidding.
No,
of course, you know.
Absolutely not. But you know, I really want to lift you up. I really want to lift that book up a lot. And you know, when we start taking a look at the book, how can people find out more about the book, and how can they get a hold of you again? You know, just give us some insight, because you and I connected through a mutual friend, and I'm really just so excited about what you're doing. So why don't you drop some wisdom on us now?
I'm just grateful and thankful that you have the interest, you know, because you never know once you finish something what's going to be like. But it's being published. I can't believe that I found a publisher who's willing to publish it, but he's very enthused about it. And it's a small publisher called Regent Press in Berkeley.
Okay.
And people can refer to him, because right now the book is in between. I mean, I have a sample copy, but it was filled with a lot of editing mistakes that I'm going through and editing. It's back at the printer as we speak.
Right. So this book is coming out. This
book is coming out.
The introduction.
It's in production, and now we're in post-production, really, because
great.
We will. So it's called Visionary Healing: Psychedelic Medicine and Shamanism. And I had the good fortune of having Ralph Metzner's wife write a preface, and my friend Charlie Grobe, who's a eminent psychiatrist at UCLA and a psychedelic researcher who's written books, write a foreword to it. So it's very insightful just reading the preface and foreword. But
great book.
I think it'll be out in 1 to 2 months, the latest. I have to go through. They're going to send me another sample copy, but the covers and the Library of Congress have all the information.
Right.
So, and they could also contact you. And
Beautiful. Contact me, right, at the Mindfulness Experience at workmindfulness.com, or Alexander Shester, Shester, Dr. Alexander Shester. And again, the name of the book is Visionary Healing, Psychedelic Medicines and Shamanism. And this book, again, is just so filled with so many good things: shamanism, plant medicines, psychedelic medicines and experiences, looking at, the folklore behind shamanism and other medicines, as well as getting into a whole appendix filled with, meditations honoring the mutuality, receptivity, interdependence, and orientation and balance. Loads of good stuff coming from you,
Are you
Dr. Shester.
serious?
Thank you.
Are you serious? You mean I wrote that?
You wrote that, man.
No kidding. One thing I did want to add before we shut down.
Yes, sir.
Difference in this book and others, it's filled with beautiful visionary artwork. Not only mine is not so great, but at least I have visionary artists from Peru who painted these incredible pictures to give a person a visual experience of the psychedelic experience. And people from this country, from Canada. So it's an art book as well as an information book.
Some of it incredibly juicy, and don't let him tell you that he doesn't know how to paint. Like really, like some of it's so juicy, with the sun and the moon, the womb, the ability to birth new realities. I mean, it really is an incredibly wonderful, heartfelt book. And I just, again, want to thank you so much, Alex, for being here and for dropping a lot of wisdom. We've only really hit the tip of the iceberg. So I hope I can get you back again on the show and we can go ahead and dive into this a little bit more. Yeah.
It's my pleasure. I'd be happy to. And don't forget one thing, that nature is erotic. It's beautiful. It's a very erotic experience, not in a sexual sense. I don't mean it that way, but it's sensual. And we have to learn to love that. That's how we would save nature, I think. We have to learn to love nature. Anyway, that's my last
Om
Mani Padme. Oh my God.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks again.
Thank you for being a part of the Mindfulness Experience podcast. I hope you enjoyed this interesting conversation and the insights from Dr. Alexander Shester. I hope he gave you some insights about the world of shamanism and the use of psychedelic medicine, the hopeful aspects as well as the shadowy side. We have other exciting guests that are coming up in the next few weeks. Please follow our podcast and connect. Leave us a review and suggest some topics that you'd like to hear from me as well as our guest. Connect with me on social media and visit my website at workmindfulness.com for more mindfulness experience moments. Thank you again, and I hope to see you on the next show. Take care.